You are listening to Freethinker Radio here on 90.1 KPFT Houston. We're going to listen to a quick song and we'll be right back. Stay tuned.
It's fun to play that. I didn't hear that before. I'm so glad you brought that in.
Yeah, that was
That's probably a first on KPFT.
Yeah, I'm guessing so. Maybe even Houston radio in general. That's kind of cool.
Welcome to Freethinker Radio, Houston.
Yeah, Freethinker Radio on 90.1 KPFT Houston. We are here every Friday from 3 to 4 p.m. and then on the HD2 dial from 4 to 6 p.m.
We're like the bookends for your weekend.
Hang out with us Friday and Monday. And there is still an ongoing pledge drive taking place here at KPFT, so for those who are interested in supporting in any number of ways, you can either visit kpft.org or call in at 713-526-5738, and you will get directed to some of our lovely staff here and volunteers who are here to help and get your pledge. And
every single bit goes to keeping KPFT on the air, so there's no limit to how much or how little you can contribute. So whatever you're feeling,
corporate free, community radio. Where else?
They got all kinds of goodies too. Yeah. And where else are you going to have a dialogue like what we're going to get into? And if you've been listening, you know. So for sure. And I want to remind everybody while we're on the supporting KPFT, thanks KPFT for everything you've done for Freethinker Radio. But also, if you can't contribute, if you just don't have 50 cents to call in and contribute, there's all kinds of ways you can help. You can help spread the name of KPFT. In a time when alternative media is under fire, community radio is extremely important, maybe more important than it has been in decades. It's a crucial time. Also on kpft.org, ways to get involved. If you look right there, you can find ways to associate your Randall's number and your Kroger number so that when you shop there, those stores give money to KPFT. They don't take any money from you, but you're shopping there. If you do that, helps KPFT, which I go to Kroger sometimes, so I associated my number with that. But we got a very exciting show for you today. We've got extra guests in the studio. We're here with Johnny.
Johnny's here with us. Say what's up, Johnny.
He's trying to hide. What's up, Johnny? And so we got all kinds of news.
We also have our other friend here if he wants to say hi. We have Tripp in the studio with us, our long-term friend, Houston activist, musician extraordinaire. Tripp is in the house.
One-man mosh pit.
One-man mosh pit.
Don't put me on the spot. I might say a bad word.
Don't put labels on me.
Stop yelling at me. All right. Well, this is it for Freethinker Radio. And again, if you want to call in, your calls will be directed towards supporting through pledges. And I don't know, maybe later on we could take calls a different way.
Well, we did the Discord, right?
We did do the Discord, but I also have a Google Voice number that we could maybe give out and just take calls that way. That would
For
be,
sure. And
so,
you can also,
we'll
if you want, you can message the Freethinker Radio Facebook page. We try not to send people to Facebook too often. I'm sorry I said it twice this show, but yeah, there's that. There's the HoustonFreethinkers.com where we'll get all the stories in. And I don't know, we got a lot of stuff coming up this weekend. The farmers market in the Heights will be there. All kinds of, speaking about, alternative solutions, get tired of the big box stores, want some honey, want some, grown without chemical vegetables. That's probably the place to go. There's also going to be musicians and just all kinds of stuff.
Where
so
is
that's 1245 Heights Boulevard right
the
there.
Heights Epicurean Market?
Yeah, Heights Epicurean. So I wanted to make sure I mentioned that this show. I know, we often mention different markets because, it's part of the recovery. You've heard of the economic recovery? Well, you shopping people is part of the recovery.
Supports local food production as well, which is always a good thing.
Good food.
As far as just, what I've been up to or what I'm going to get into this weekend, might go to the House of J to pick some greens. I told you guys last week that that's where I've been getting some of my greens. Besides participating at local farmers markets, I've been going over to the House of J and clipping some kale and some what else is there, Johnny? There's like cabbage, there's Swiss chard, there's other things
Put
there.
your shirt on.
But yeah, over at the House of Jay, which is where Johnny lives. You guys doing any gardening things coming up, Johnny, or what are y'all working on there over at the garden?
We actually just turned over a ton of compost.
That's a lot of
other people
compost.
out there, if you do have land, there's never a shortage of old people who hate leaves in their yard. So there's just all these bags of leaves and good things for you to recycle around your neighborhood, make compost. All the rains helped out, and we're starting to plant flowers and peppers. We want to bring the bees.
Yeah, cool. Flowers, peppers. Oh, yeah, I think I've seen the post about that. You guys are trying to bring in the pollinators, which is always a good thing here in the Houston area. So what if somebody wants to get involved? Do you guys do any garden days lately or volunteer days or anything like that? Or is there a good time for someone to come check it out over there on the East End?
Yeah. We always tell people to come by on Sunday around 2 o'clock. We're always out there.
Where is come by?
Oh, sorry, 323 Hutchison Street. It's over on the East End by the coffee plant. So
That's cool.
And they can
easily
find it on
access.
that website we don't want to mention on House of J.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You can,
House of J.
You can just type it into Google, which
Yeah,
if
you'll
you want
find
to
it.
mention that website.
You can do a search.
You can type it into the CIA search engine if you want.
They have it.
Or DuckDuckGo. I'm sure it'll come up too. But yeah, cool. So people want to get plugged into some local gardening. There are, of course, plenty of gardens around here, but, we're promoting one here that's involved in our little community. Johnny and Jeffer and the folks over there at House of J do different benefit shows and shows
there.
in general, and Micah does some shows there. There's
No.
parties.
I was
There's
just there.
So we need
Do
to
you-
do another garden run.
Do you want to tell people what you're doing tonight? Is that an invite only, or is that
Yeah, no, that's just
Okay, well,
Oh,
never
that's
mind.
just us.
You can't come.
We'll be there, though.
You're not allowed. But in the future, there will be other events that he'll tell you about, and they
That we
be
won't
so-
go to.
That they won't be so secretive. So stay tuned for that. And just I guess on far as like we're talking about gardening and kind of what I did this morning, dude. I was actually headed to your house, Johnny, to go clip some greens. But then on the way there, Miriam and I think I told you before. I found like 2 different areas where there's mulberry trees growing and they're just, thriving. So we went there a couple weeks ago and they were just literally falling all over the sidewalks. And we noticed this time we went there, I was like, man, they're not falling anymore. Maybe it's getting too warm because they usually thrive towards the end of spring and then early summer. It's already getting hot though, so they won't be around much longer. But then we noticed, wait, there still are a bunch of them. They're just on the other side of the fence. And this fence is it looks like some abandoned property over off, what is the big hill? Lockwood. Over off Lockwood as it goes over towards Navigation and all that. And we noticed that the fence was open, though, that the gate was open. So we went over there on our bikes and just climbed trees for like an hour, just picking mulberries and gathered like a huge grocery bag full of mulberries. And the bottom was just dyed purple. And so we're going to be making mulberry muffins. And it's cool because it was foraged literally from like a 7-minute bike ride away from my house. That's kind of cool.
You can be a pretty successful fruit scavenger around here if you ride around. There's orange trees, limes, peppers if you're up to it. I always see all that stuff in loquats. A lot of people don't know about those.
Yeah,
I mean,
lots of loquats.
They're like little orange lemons. Delicious.
All right.
They're delicious. They are, and they're very. How do you put it? They grow easy as heck.
Yeah,
You can
they're
just
all over.
plant those seeds right afterwards, and in your life, within the 10 years, you'll have fruit from that tree.
Fruit.
Yeah.
All right. Well, unless Tripp has anything to add about his weekend or what he's doing this weekend, let's get into some news.
Well, we like to start with the fun stuff that's going on, right? And one of the reasons we do that is because sometimes this news is so so monolithic and in our face, police state, going to give you a vaccine, pedophiles, war. Oh, it doesn't stop. So we want to remind everybody in the face of that, there's KPFT bringing the dialogue to you so we can talk about it. There's things to get into.
There's solutions.
There's solutions. There's Sumo World on the HD right now.
Community gardening, community houses, community radio. It's all about the community around here.
And then it's just you going out. You can plant your own garden.
Yeah, you can be a community of one if you like. I like that sometimes.
Yeah, sometimes you gotta, because all this other news is so much. You want to get into it now, though, Derek?
Yeah, unless Tripp has anything to say. Is Tripp? No, cool. All right, well, let's continue then. The first story I got, Micah, I think we should start off with is the Tuttle raid update. This was just reported by the Chronicle a couple days ago. Evidence left behind after botched Pecan Park drug raid raises new questions about shooting. So we're now, 3 months away? It's happened in January.
Yeah. And people are like, why are y'all still talking about it? Well,
we keep finding out that the cops are lying. Apparently. So it says a 4-day...
But they don't want you saying that.
No, they don't. A 4-day independent forensic review at 7815 Harding Street, which is where these Regina Nicholas and Dennis Tuttle and their dog were murdered by men in blue. It says that this independent forensic team, after 4 days reviewing, says that evidence left behind by the city's crime scene team, that's the Houston Police Department's crime scene teams after a botched drug raid, basically sort of disproves what HPD is saying. Namely, it says that they found no signs of that the pair fired shots at the police.
I heard somebody of significant authority said that you shouldn't speak if anybody speaks about the police as an enemy, then they will have their number.
What's
and I assume they mean the cell phone number or 713-526-5738. But the reason I ask about this is because if there's actually misinformation coming out, would your friend give you misinformation? Would your loyal servant give you misinformation? Or would your enemy give you misinformation?
Well, perhaps we can
Just
get
asking.
the president of the police union.
I mean, would it be wrong to think that someone who's lying to you and taking money, is an enemy? I mean,
maybe we can get him to come on the show at some point, because I don't want to speak for him. But you are right, Micah, that he did. Joe Gimaldi or something like that. I can't remember how to pronounce his last name, but he's the president of the HPD union, and he has previously said, as Micah said, that people who are out there talking about cops and spreading false things, or he's gonna look them up, or I don't know.
We got your number.
We got your number, things like that. So now we're seeing that independent investigators, forensic crime scene investigators, have basically said that based on what they've seen, that there's no way. This is a quote from the attorney speaking for that team, Mike Doyle, who's representing the Nicholas family. Quote, "It doesn't appear that they took the basic steps, they being HPD, to confirm and collect the physical evidence to know whether police were telling the truth, or the crime scene investigators. What's the whole point of forensic scene documentation? That's the basic check on just making stuff up."
So let me understand. We had a lie that kicked off the raid, at least one.
The lie about the fact that there was supposedly an informant that these people were dealing heroin, and it was...
So there was a lie that there was an informant. There was a lie that there was heroin, and now there's...
And apparently, because this is the key thing, is that the forensic team found no signs that the pair, Regina Nicholas and Dennis Tuttle, actually fired shots at the police first, and plenty of signs that the previous investigators overlooked dozens of pieces of evidence, of potential evidence, in what one expert called a sloppy investigation.
That couldn't be the case. No.
So what this would mean, because there have been allegations since this started that the police may have accidentally shot each other, that the thing went so wrong, but they keep claiming
friendly fire.
There was no friendly fire.
It's a war zone.
Police chief has said, this is what the president of the police union has said, that there was no friendly fire, but now the attorney representing the team, the family, the people who were killed, they hired a team of independent forensic investigators and found, after a 4-day review, that does not appear to be true, that it doesn't appear that the couple actually shot on the cops. And in case you don't know, undercover narcotics officers burst into the front door of their home on January 28th and opened fire as soon as a pit bull apparently lunged at them. And according to the police, hearing the gunshot, Tuttle came running out from the back of the house and started shooting, striking the agent. So that's what the police say, but there doesn't seem to be evidence to back it up.
I'd like to pose a question real quick.
Backtracking, another press conference.
I'd like to pose a question, and I know we've been over and over this, and it's a brutal, difficult thing. One thing I'd like to mention before the question is, I think you've got a great idea. Maybe we should reach out to the head of the police union, because with that type of rhetoric, and at that moment, it'd be great if we could understand the mentality behind and talk to him about the signal it sends out as well. So maybe he's a rational person, and, stepping away from that moment of passion, he can see that when he said that, it could be construed this way. And especially with the case unfolding with so many wrongs on their side like that. Also, being in America, I would think this would be everywhere, but we should be a little critical of our authorities. Not saying we should be just hateful to them right away. They could be good people. They should be good people. But at the same time, we are expected to, keep account of this. If we don't, nobody else would. And if nobody ever did, then we wouldn't have the history in this country of change that we have. So finally.
Well, listen to this. There's just a couple more points.
Let me get to another question, and then I'll stop. So the question is, were the Tuttles within their rights
to shoot back at the police if they did? I'd say so. I mean, you had people who were raiding their house without announcement. They had no idea who it could be. Whatever they may or may not have been involved in, no drugs were found. Definitely not the drugs that drugs were found. They had weed and they had potential traces of cocaine.
Decriminalized in Maryland.
Which is decriminalized here.
Houston.
And they didn't actually find cocaine. They found metabolites that could be part of cocaine. But they didn't find what they claimed was there, right?
And this couple have been married for 20 years. They have different last names, and I don't think it makes a difference that they were married, but my point on this is that these were a stable couple. I mean, that just got executed. I mean, their neighbors are saying all this stuff, and nobody mentions that they were married for 20 years. And that's just an incidental point that I wanted to go ahead.
Well, let me mention a couple more points from this article because it further destroys this story by the police. It literally just rips it to shreds. Okay, so the 4-day review by independent forensic expert Mike Maloney, retired supervisory special agent with Naval Criminal and Investigative Services, or NCIS, is raising new questions about the bust. It says, though police said they started shooting when the dog lunged at them as they came across the door, his team found that the dog was shot and killed at the edge of the dining room, 15 feet from the front door. Authorities never picked up the shotgun shell when they collected evidence, and police said that the Tuttle started firing at them, but Maloney's team also didn't find that. One of the attorneys representing the family says, the initial bullet trajectories appear to be somewhat contradictory. We see no evidence that anybody inside the house was firing towards the door. Some of the bullet holes outside the house appeared at least a foot from the door, and he says, basically, you can't see into the house from there. You're firing into the house through a wall. So
now, we've heard about firing into buildings before.
It could be that, that maybe this was a lot sloppier or violent than people even want to believe or that the police are willing to admit, so they're blaming the Tuttles on firing first and these kinds of things. But that alone, if they're saying the dog was found, 15 feet from the door, that kind of seems unfair, or that's not true. The other thing is, here's another key point. For 3 months after this raid, the home sat abandoned with windows boarded up and flowers in the front yard with evidence just lying inside the house and just sitting there. The HPD, or the crime scene investigative team,
isn't it weird that
did not
investigate
investigate.
Up so fast?
It's crazy. It says, and he says, the lawyer basically said, our goal is through the Maloney, who's the investigator, the crime scene investigator, said, our goal is through the bloodstain and bullet trajectory testing to be able to tell where everyone was standing when the shots were fired. It says they won't have their final determination on that until more tests coming back, but in the course of their weekend review, they found a trove of uncollected evidence and apparent oversight of the Houston Forensic Science Center. And that Dr. Peter Stout, who's the president of the Houston Forensic Science Center, said that it was just because there was a chaotic crime scene, and that his team took hundreds of photos and collected hours of video during multiple visits. There is always the risk that some evidence will not be found, or that items that seem unimportant today may become significant tomorrow. So, yeah, there's definitely a lot more going on here, and I haven't seen anything about HPD or the mayor or any of them holding a press conference to discuss this or talk about this. I haven't heard any more from that Joe Gimaldi guy. He hasn't said crap about it since then.
Something needs to come of this.
I mean,
honestly.
it's really,
I think it's really important to think about the sequence of events and how it happened.
It's also a national story. Like,
yeah,
people
and
have paid attention to this throughout, and just for nothing to come of it is going to be sending a message to everyone else about
that
our
the cops
city.
can kill people.
Yeah. I mean, and even if that's not intended, that's what's coming out. And if you say anything, then
you're gonna get threatened.
Yeah.
I don't know how to take what he said other than to be a threat, right? I mean, I think that's pretty clear to anybody who said that. He was pretty angry and the officers had just been shot at, so he was really trying to kind of portray this like our officers just put themselves on the line to stop some violent drug criminals, and we all know that's not true.
Our officers just went in he didn't come out and say, don't anybody complain about people going into to your house when civilian clothes and shooting at stuff. He didn't say that though, did he?
No, he did not.
But that's how they appeared to the Tuttles, and it seems like that's how they could appear to anybody that they just get a whim to.
Well, I mean, that's the thing is, maybe some people you see, they're like, well, they were drug dealers, right? Because some people just go off the headlines. So they're okay. They're like, well, I guess they were drug
deserve to be
dealers.
shot.
They go off the headlines that they hear out there. They might not dig deeper into this like we're doing. So they heard
They
about
hated
it
the police.
a
But
couple
in this
months ago.
country, even criminals have rights still.
Yeah, dude, but I mean, we know the reality though is some people, like, if they hear that you committed a crime, like, they honestly couldn't care. Like, you know, it's like I've had people say, well, then they shouldn't have been doing that. They,
Well, that's what we have to work against, right?
Whatever. I mean, that's exactly why we're out here talking these ideas, and we definitely appreciate everybody who's tuned in here on 90.1 KPFT Houston. This is community-supported, corporate-free, commercial-free radio, and we want to invite you guys to call in at 713-526-5738 to pledge some support to keep us on the air, to keep all the other great programs here on KPFT going for another year, to keep our movement alive. You know, we're really, like we were saying earlier, not just this show, but this whole station offers something unique that you won't find anywhere else in the city of Houston. And we know a lot more people are using the internet to tune in as well. So that's the thing, is you don't necessarily have to tune in on 90.1 KPFT in Houston. You might be listening from some other city, some other state. We got people who pay attention to our work elsewhere as well. And if you want to support, even if you're not in the city of Houston, you can still call in and pledge some way. And as Micah said, if you visit kpft.org, you can find other methods of support.
No doubt, no doubt. You know, I want to, something we started mentioning on the HD show a little while back, but if you're hearing this on one of the archives in the future,
if we're talking to you from the past, or if you're in the future listening,
you can still support KPFT.
You can still support. And also what we were saying is that they can call in, right?
Oh, yeah.
We put these archives, so just for those who don't know, every Friday after the show, I load our archive of the show on the Conscious Resistance YouTube channel that you can find on YouTube, and we put our archives and we upload it to a totally different audience where it gives another, few hundred views or so, and they like to chat along and comment along. So if you're listening now on
if you're
YouTube,
one of those
in the
hundreds,
future,
yeah,
remember you can call into the show on
or
Fridays.
SoundCloud.
Fridays at 3 p.m. Central, whichever time zone you're in, you can call in. So.
Yeah, so if you have an idea of something that, gets sparked during listening to us from the past in the future, now, then we'd love for you to call on Friday to 713-526-5738 and discuss it. That gives you time to get it together, get your ideas together, and we can continue this dialogue, which is, of crucial importance at a time when everybody's just like unfriending their friends and arguing with people and just taking a surface level view and running off with it. So we got a chance to dig deeper, and I want to thank everybody for joining us today in this discussion.
Absolutely. What other stories you got locally, Michael? I got a couple of Houston ones if you don't got anything.
I got some more Houston stuff.
I mean, we're going to have to get into it sooner or later, but I don't want to go straight from one cop shooting to another, so I'll skip that one.
Sometimes that's what is in the news, man.
It is what is in the news, man. So I guess I'll just give a brief update on Proposition B, which we've talked about now ongoing. It's been the big issue in the city. The city voted, over 200,000 plus people voted to give the firefighters a raise last fall. There was a lawsuit from, again, the HPD union filing a lawsuit saying that they thought that was unconstitutional to give the firefighters the same amount of money as the police. And the mayor has been supportive of the cops' efforts. He's been resisting this, and they fired 220 plus firefighters. One court a couple months ago said that Proposition B was legal and constitutional. Now another court found just on Wednesday that it was illegal, unconstitutional, and the mayor celebrated this. He was very thankful and happy, and he said, okay, now we'll rehire those firefighters, and we'll talk about giving you guys a raise, but not the raise that the people voted for. He's like, we'll talk about giving you a raise that we can afford. So he's celebrating it. I did see that the police chief was celebrating the police, but this is a different. There is the police chief and the president of the union. They're two different people, and the president of the union is still pushing for change, and they're apparently going to fight this court decision, and it's kind of like not sure where it's going to go. The Houston Firefighters Union is saying they're going to appeal the ruling, so it'll eventually maybe make it to the state Supreme Court or somewhere else. So this battle is far from over, but it's definitely a local issue that continues to get attention here, because the different candidates who are running and the different people in the city are just seeing this as the mayor not paying attention to the people, and I guess also some of the firefighters are feeling like, hey, he campaigned. When he campaigned in 2015, he was saying he was going to give the firefighters raises. You can literally find videos of the mayor talking about that and saying, one of the things I'm going to make sure we do is get you guys raised. And apparently he is willing to do that, but not in the way that the voters of Houston called for it. So we'll keep you updated on
I'm a little
how that
frustrated
unfolds.
with stories that I'm seeing about this, because what I mostly find is, where it says that it's the city's charter amendment conflicts with the Texas Constitution. And, you know, if you're going to make a claim like that, then, you know, you should at least put that argument out there. So
I haven't seen any of them say
like, where
specifically
is it, you know?
what is it, what is the language in the Texas Constitution that conflicts with what the city
yeah,
said.
and it
Like,
should be pretty dang straightforward.
is there literally a thing in the Texas Constitution that says firefighters can't be paid the same as cops?
I think it has something to do with
I don't know what else it could apply to. Like,
yeah, I think it has to do with the like the qualifications. I think that's the argument, but I don't know because they don't put it in any of these articles that I'm seeing there. They make that claim, but you know, maybe we'll dig into that and get a little bit more into that on Monday.
Yeah, we'll tune more into that on Monday. Maybe actually, I've been reaching out to Marty Langton, who is the president of the police union, to see if he might come on for an interview. We didn't get him today, but maybe we'll have him on Monday, and stay tuned for that.
We got some non-police state, non-war crazy news here. A woman was beaten with a hammer by 3 known attackers in Southwest
I thought
Houston.
you said non-crazy news. What the heck?
Yeah, well, that's Houston, you know. What's kind of crazy is she wasn't armed. I mean, she didn't have a gun or some mace.
Would a gun ban have stopped that?
Yeah, the hammers. You got to get the hammers out of the hands of people who like tools.
First the guns, then the knives, then the hammers.
Hammers are it, man. But luckily, she's in stable condition. I'm sure it's horrible that she was attacked with hammers. Not trying to make light of that situation.
Not at all.
There's a lot of violence out there. So anytime you can, either within yourself or with a friend, kind of turn that down a notch, we might be able to move to a little bit more happiness. I find myself getting, you know, just the traffic can ramp up your emotions a little bit, especially with people cutting in front of you and not even signaling and slamming on the brakes. There's all kinds of reasons to get upset, but at the same time, I don't know. Wonder why these guys beat a woman with a hammer. That's pretty bad. Think about it. 3 men went and beat a woman with a hammer. I'm not trying to be sexist or anything, but that's just wrong.
Yeah, I think no matter what you identify as, getting beat with a hammer is probably not a good
3
thing.
on 1? 3 women and 1 sumo wrestler, and that'd still be wrong.
Yeah. Dang, that's crazy. That's here. You know, it's interesting you say, well, this is Houston, right? Because I'm signed up for the press releases from the city of Houston. And, yeah, there's so much stuff that goes on in the city. I get daily press releases that said, body found here, deceased here, shooting in here. Like, literally, this is going on every day around the city. And it's kind of an interesting view to kind of to tap in and to see what's going on. Because if you don't, you know, you're just going about living your normal life, whatever. And, yeah, this is a giant city with several million, you know, 3, almost 4 million people in it. And murders happen every day here, and you know, people get attacked with hammers, and people get, what was the one we were talking about? There was like somebody at a bus stop, and they got like a machete chopped off somebody else's arm or something. I mean, like, it's a wild city out here, dude. Like, you got to be careful. But yeah, it's real life. H-Town.
Yeah, for sure. Hopefully, from, you know, when we're talking about those raids, you know, the only thing that kind of just a one last, well, they just need, in my opinion, if nothing else, we need to make sure that they always have the body cameras on them, because they're going in on a raid, right? You know, I mean, so obviously that information would be useful.
The body cameras didn't help there.
No. Lots of money was spent on that. Hey, I want to talk about tasers. I mean, we were talking about tasers a little while ago when we were talking about you at Standing Rock. You didn't hear us out there, but yeah, we were talking about tasers. It turns out that police officers, obviously nationwide, think that tasers are less lethal alternatives to guns, are being sold that way. And the idea is that to be able to stop someone sounds good, right? Because, you know, look at all the times people were being killed by police, sometimes innocently. But it's usually an unarmed but violent person, they say, and then they wouldn't have to kill them, right? But taser use is, despite this, controversial. Lawsuits have alleged the electroshock weapons kill rather than subdue people. Yep. And what happens when tasers don't effectively subdue a person? Police officers in San Antonio, Houston, have experienced consequences when tasers fail. Not just, you know, fail and kill the person, you know, fail to be less than lethal, but fail to subdue a person.
Yeah.
Texas Public Radio and Houston Public Media basically did some analysis, and they found out that the newer models, when we've talked about this a year back, are less effective than the older ones. We were talking about it from the standpoint of what the manufacturers and the police were saying in the reports then. Now they've got this analysis that proves that fact. The data shows that across Texas, there were 23 fatal shootings between 2015 and 2017 involving taser use by law enforcement. 11 of those incidents escalated after an officer's use of taser did not subdue the person.
Well, we just talked about a story the other day, I think it was on the HD side, about this dude who got killed. He was tased by 2 officers at the same time, and I was basically saying, like, they claim he was on drugs and they claim this, but I mean, obviously, like the Tuttle case, we know sometimes their claims aren't true. But these things happen so much, we can't necessarily catch everyone and do open records requests, and people aren't out there asking these questions. So like Johnny was saying, like it just next story, you know what I mean?
time
Somebody gets
goes by,
killed by
another
cops,
year,
and all they have to do is say, oh, they were on drugs, and we couldn't stop them, so we both tased them, and that gave them a heart
And
attack.
we got too many people out here with Black Lives Matter and all this stuff talking against police.
So the way you actually would die from a taser, it's got to do with your heart, right?
Yeah, people have.
So-
This guy had a
so-
seizure
So
from it.
some people
On drugs.
There are a lot of people that are prescribed.
Why would you
those antipsychotic drugs? And I know that if you're in fluctuation between taking those, you're much more prone to a seizure or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, they don't know what your health conditions are, and they're just tasing
Exactly.
people randomly or whatever, and they could supposedly less
Hey.
lethal. But
Not randomly, so.
well, you know what I mean.
Yeah. But yeah.
In the
1,
sense
2,
of like
3, you.
they're going to protect you, they claim.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and APM, these reports basically found 2 other Houston cases since 2016 where officers shot and killed suspects after their tasers failed to subdue them. I imagine that this could kind of freak a cop out, too. What if you had a real situation and you're tasing the person and they're not stopping? And you weren't going to shoot them in the head to begin with, but it's getting faster and faster, so then you got to shoot them, right? Because they're getting angrier at being tased.
Like, dang, I got one of these new weak models.
Pepper spray is much more immobilizing, in my opinion. Where are you going after you take that to the face?
I mean, seriously.
You're not going anywhere.
I mean, some people, it's the same thing.
you
Some
can't
people
die
can
from that,
withstand
you know?
pepper spray, but yeah, they won't die typically from that. Like, some people
may
are
be
capable of
allergic.
just, like, pushing through it. But I think that you're right. Like, you can, for the most
You won't
part.
be able to see very well.
No, you won't be able to see at least, and then that's more subdued than anything else. Like,
So I do want to mention that in all of these cases that I've just been speaking about, the Baltazar Ramos, the David Campos, in all of these cases, the new model of taser, the X2, was used. The company Axon, formerly known as Taser International, they got to change their names, right? Has a monopoly on making these electroshock weapons. So it turns out that reports suggest that since Houston police upgraded to new tasers, the effectiveness decreased from 75 to 69%.
Well, that's crazy. That's
Newer
an
ain't
example
always
of
better.
competition not being able to, work its magic. If there's just one taser company, then where's
And
the
it's getting
incentive
weaker.
for them to make a better taser?
They're making worse tasers.
I think another angle is that, again, this is taxpayer money, so taxpayers
Yep.
are spending, they're using your money that you did, whether you want it or not, to buy tasers, which are potentially killing people, but now they're using ones that are weaker and less effective.
Almost a racket.
One police officer, Karen Taylor, is suing the company because she claims that she tased a female shoplifting suspect, okay? Maybe she was hungry, some bread, whatever. Just think about this, though. The cop is suing, okay? I mean, that ought to tell you something. The cop is suing because the cop used the taser and had to tase a shoplifting suspect 6 times without success. The woman fought her, and the lawsuit claims the officer had to retire due to injury sustained during the fight. It alleges the X2 has less stopping power than the previous version because the electric charge is lower. So, I think some of it is like, when do you deploy a taser, and then the other part of it is, well, these things aren't really working. It's not really causing what they call the neuromuscular incapacitation of a person. Did you feel muscularly incapacitated at Standing Rock?
I definitely, my knees fell out from under me. I got
Wow.
hit with five at once, and I don't know what type they were using or whatever, but they're the kind that like send out the little prongs and stick in you. And yeah, I definitely, as soon as I felt it was like a shot going up the body, and I just collapsed. Like my knees fell out from under me, and then somebody had to drag me out because I literally couldn't even feel my body. Like I was just like.
Get a little bit more on this story. Michael Cavanaugh, who teaches criminal justice at UH downtown, said, and this is something I was referencing earlier, he said that knowing a taser might not be effective could alter how an officer reacts in a critical situation. Makes sense, right? If you're here in a situation and it requires violence and your one violent tool is kind of weak, if you're an officer in the department and you have questions as to whether or not that taser deployment is going to work, that is going to be a scary situation when you have to use that taser. It's like playing Russian roulette. People asked the HPD and the mayor's office for comment. Representatives declined from both. They also brought the issue to the attention of Houston City Council member Brenda Stardig, who actually heads the city's public safety committee. And she did say, it seems like she's willing to at least talk to people here and there. If the police department has identified that there's an issue with any of the equipment that we have, we want to make sure that we have the proper equipment in their hands so that we can protect the public and protect the police officers. Makes sense, And Houston police officers say, recently retired HPD Captain Greg Freeman said the tasers, both old and new, were effective. We've got all kinds of stories, but it doesn't seem like the science is showing that. He said, I thought both of them worked fine. We upgraded because it was the newest model and gave officers a little more usability, except for not working. Harris County Sheriff's deputies are using a taser model with similar power to what HPD uses, called the X26P. He says they use it in a training academy and have no problem with them. So, things to think about. Consequences of a failure. On April 20th, San Antonio Park police officer was patrolling West Side, and he spotted what looked like a man assaulting a woman. According to police reports and the officer's body camera, the officer approached the pair. The man was talking alongside with his common-law wife, who called out to Valdez, who ignored him and continued to walk away. At which point, the officer pulled out his taser and pointed it at him. The device's red laser dot glowed in the middle of his chest. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a knife. Martinez ordered him over and over to drop the weapon. Valdez charged the officer, and Martinez pulled the taser trigger, launching probes at the man's body. The officer expected the probes to deliver enough voltage to incapacitate him, but guess what? He wasn't incapacitated. Instead, he dropped to his knees, rolled on the ground, dislodged the probes, and then charged it. As he moved, the officer reared back with his arm cocked. The individual was going to throw his knife at him, and so the officer opened fire, striking him in the torso, and he was pronounced dead. Guess how long that took? 30 seconds. That whole story was 30 seconds of time on the street. And, that's kind of the point, right? Here's this guy, who knows what was going on. I guess it was the guy and his wife. Maybe they had an argument or something, but obviously nothing was too bad happening. Yeah, the dude's dead. So other people came to the scene, and the news came, and they tried to say that from what they heard, the officer did everything right. He tried to use his taser first, and when that was ineffective, he went to his firearm. People ask, why did the taser fail? As they're digging deeper into this, in a slick science fiction style promotional video for the Taser Model X2, Axon are not shy with their boosts about its quality and dependability. Everything we've learned about officer and suspect safety has come down to this. This is what the narrator says. Meet the X2, the next generation of Taser electronic control devices. Quality is crucial in our devices. They're selling them, and people and police officers and law enforcement agencies are buying them in the belief that it's going to reduce shootings, but it turns out that in some cases it's increasing shootings because, the change in the behavior at that time. 30 seconds can really change a moment.
30 seconds can end a life.
Yep.
All right, man. You want to go to some music? Come back with some more?
Yeah, let's go to some music.
Johnny's got something pulled up. We're going to come back in just a couple of minutes. Who are we playing first, Johnny?
I think we're going to do Wolf Blitzer.
Wolf Blitzer. I want to remind everybody, this is a local band. They've been here for a long time. They came over from L.A., kind of some traditional hard rock sound. They're going to be at Dan Electro's on May 20th with some touring acts. It'll be a pretty heavy, good show. So I hope you all enjoy this.
We'll be right back. Stay tuned.
yeah. Well, that's not unusual. It's just that the moon was full, and you decided to go. Now here I sit, a hand on the door, hearing your voice I've known a couple of light years ago, heading straight for your heart. We both know what memories can bring, they bring diamonds and roses. We both know what memories can bring, they bring diamonds and roses. Now you're setting all house, the snow in your hair. Now I see you hanging out with that criminal tail over Washington Square. Our voice comes out white clouds and needles and hands in the air. Thinking feeling for me, we both could have died then and there. Now you're telling me that you're not nostalgic. Mom, give me my word for it. While you were gone from my words, and that keeps thinking big. And I'm some of that bigness now. It all comes back to me. Yes, I heard you dearly. And if your girlfriend is diamonds and rust, you know I'm we both know what memories can bring, they bring diamonds and rust. Yes, we both know what memories can bring, they bring diamonds and rust. Diamonds, diamonds and rust. Diamonds, diamonds and
All right. Welcome
That's a
back.
classic cover. They got a lot of music out there. Wolf Blitzer, all one word. People are like, I said I'm going to play some Wolf Blitzer. They're like, ain't he on CNN? No, we're not playing him. We're playing the music. So yeah, they're definitely a Houston, a strong act from Houston. Hope y'all enjoyed that. That song, Diamonds and Rust, a lot of people know that it was performed by Judas Priest, but it was originally written by Joan Baez. So it was sung by a female, then made more popular by metal man, and then now a metal female's giving it a whole new life. So it's pretty interesting song, and I think that's what happens, right? Classics just stick around like KPFT. Anyway, so what's you getting into, Derek?
We're going to get into some more stories.
I heard people were trying to call us.
Yeah, if you're trying to call KPFT, we do apologize. We might not have we need volunteers. There's another thing.
Yes.
We might need some people to be here.
Man the phone
volunteer
sometimes because
to
people
man
are
the
trying
phones.
to support the station, but we're busy talking and it's difficult for us.
They're either
to-
calling in to yell at us and talk about things we agree
Probably.
with, or calling in to donate. Either way, we're not getting them, and we
We
apologize.
want them to
If you
call
guys
and
want to
yell
yell
at
at
us.
us, that's next week.
Next week, once
yeah.
I mean, of course, we're thankful for the pledge drive. And we're happy to anybody who
But
contributes.
we're also thankful for your yelling at us.
But if nobody's answering the phone, it doesn't make a difference, unfortunately.
And we hate to miss out on you yelling at us or maybe giving us some ideas that we haven't had.
And on a serious note, if you did want to give into KPFT and you tried to call in and nobody answered, please visit kpft.org and see if you can contribute that way.
Do you know
for the
anything about
moment.
that text? The way there's supposed to be a thing you can text and you don't even have to interact with a person. I mean,
Let me
that's kind of
see.
scary. I mean, don't get me wrong. There's times I don't want to interact with a person, but at the same time, yeah, you can't interact with a person. So hey,
Visit kpft.org.
yeah,
for the
you'll get
moment.
everything.
There's
you
a
want there.
donate now button as soon as you pop on there, and I think that'll take care of everything that you want to do. And
if not, just call tomorrow because they're going to keep taking that money because you know why? They have to keep it together and it's a good thing and everybody cares about it. So we know you do. So don't let not getting through the first time getting away. You know how long we tried to get shows before we were over here? Goodness gracious.
so I'm going to move on to one of our favorite
No,
topics.
we didn't
that,
try. We were already on a show. Sorry.
I want to move on to one of our favorite topics that if the phone lines were open right now, we would likely be getting calls, and this is
I'll pretend to be a caller.
vaccinations. I've got this interesting map. It's an interactive map. So this is helpful. This is in the Health and Science Department of Houston Public Media, and it says, see your Texas school district's vaccination rate. And of course, we're in we got a lot of school districts around here.
Yeah.
All kinds of. It says in 72 school districts across Texas, less than 90% of kindergartners have the MMR vaccine, according to data provided by the Texas Department of Health Services and analyzed by News 88.7. The data includes coverage levels for a variety of required vaccines such as polio, chickenpox, and whooping cough. Coverage levels represent the percentage of students who have received each required vaccination for this school year. And it says coverage rates are often lower in rural areas, and in 3 districts in the Northwest, Guthrie Common School District, Turkey, Quitowoc ISD, and Meadow ISD, are below 60% on average among kindergartners. Elsewhere, coverage rates are low in central Texas Hill Country and East Texas north of Beaumont. And while so-called conscientious objections waivers that allow those with religious or moral exemptions to attend school without receiving the required immunizations are on the rise statewide, Meadow ISD reported no conscientious exemptions to the state. So yeah, it's just an interesting map that kind of shows you where people are and where people stand on levels of vaccination rates, and it's talking about kindergarten specifically. The reason I bring this up is because we've been covering stories about, the reports of what some are calling a measles epidemic. And as I've mentioned before, Dr. Peter Hotez, who is based here in Baylor College of Medicine in the Houston area, has said that he thinks that Texas is one of the worst states and Houston is one of the worst states for what he calls anti-vax propaganda and people who question vaccines, and that he wants to see more effort made to remove these exemptions. We just saw last week that Washington State removed philosophical and personal exemptions, and I think even religious exemptions.
There are no other exemptions
for vaccinations, and other states are trying to do the same thing. I did see that yesterday, the Oregon governor actually, the Senate had passed a law that would remove vaccination exemptions, and then the governor blocked it. So that happened in Oregon. So there's battles going on, and I do think that battle is already coming to Texas. There are already people who are trying to get the various exemptions here in Texas removed so that people won't be able to exempt themselves or their children from vaccinations. And again, we're not getting into the science. We're talking about the philosophy behind the fact that whether or not a government should be able to mandate you to take a medicine.
The deeper we dig into this, we've been digging into this one for a little while. The deeper we dig into it, what it makes me want to do is it makes me want to separate, falsified research on both sides, and just get that out of the discussion, because it's messing up people who want to defend people's rights to not be vaccinated, because all that garbage out there makes people think that everybody who's speaking against vaccinations or for personal liberty or rights to your body is speaking from the standpoint of that false information, rather than from a standpoint of, look, people should have some rights. Look, there is a vaccine injury court. Look, whatever it may be. But it does seem like every time it's brought up, they talk about the fake news, false information on the anti-vaxxers, which have now gotten a term, right? They're now called the anti-vaxxers. What are the others? Do we call the others the vaxxers? No.
They're pro-science.
Yeah. Yeah. See what I'm saying here? I mean,
you're anti-vax, I'm pro-science. But, Micah, though, they're already trying to fight that fake news. Of course, it's just depending on
you're not pro-freedom. You're anti-vax.
Whose definition of fake news you go by, because Facebook has already deleted pages that they spread, according to Facebook, fake information on vaccines.
For sure.
Instagram is blocking vaccine-related hashtags. Pinterest is doing the same. And check this one out. Twitter is now fighting vaccine information with the new search tool. If you go on Twitter, right?
The other thing is,
and you search vaccines. Hold on one second. If you search vaccines, you're going to get this message now. This is literally Twitter partnering up with the U.S. government. You will now get this message from the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services saying to visit their site to make sure you don't see any other propaganda.
Maybe that's why the social media isn't reaching that many people anymore, because it's become state media.
It's very close to it. I mean,
it used to work because we could just talk to each other like we are now.
No, now they got to make sure, say you're on YouTube and you search any controversial topic, whether we're talking about vaccines or whatever, you could just put it out there. There's going to be a little Wikipedia thing about the video that says, by the way, vaccines are safe, trust us, don't worry about this.
Ministry of Truth says.
And again, whether or not you fall one way or the other, I mean, you got to recognize that this is kind of scary, that these companies, these big tech companies, are partnering with the state.
You can't think for yourself anymore.
They're trying to tell you what to think. So now if you search on Twitter anything about vaccines, it literally pops up with a message from the government that says, know the facts. To make sure you get the best information on vaccinations, resources are available from the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services.
My problem with that, man, is they're just assuming the stupidity of the consumer, the individual, because they're basically saying, well, we don't trust you.
You can't figure it out.
You can't take both these sides and decide for yourself. So it just seems
Let
like
us do
they're-
it for you.
So we must not have much of an education system because, nobody's being taught to reason and make their decisions. We must have not much of a republic because people aren't allowed to, exercise their freedom. And also, when they say you should believe the government, to me, this sounds pretty scary because, it'd be nice to believe. And sometimes I do believe them. But at the same time, we've watched white powder, take us to Iraq, and all these
Weapons of mass
lies,
destruction.
all these lies. Why would we just trust them blindly on something? And I'm not saying just trust them that vaccines work, because it's obvious that some do. But do you know about each vaccine, and why would I take their information on it? I mean, when I look at the things that have been approved by the government for use, I mean, I don't know.
And even if you fall on the side that, well, hey, I think that all the vaccines are safe and there's no reason to question them at all and you guys are crazy.
Well, you still
at the end of the day, you should still, Micah's pointing out, still legitimate reasons to be skeptical of what the government says, or at the very least, even if you're not skeptical, to say, hey, why are these corporations partnering so closely with the government where they're literally now just repeating the government line?
Mm-hmm.
They're using their platforms, which you can quote, you can say, oh, these are private companies, but we know more and more that they're not, that they take so much funding from the government and they're becoming increasingly integrated and, connected. This is the corporatist sort of playbook
almost
here
like an oligarchy.
with the government. And then people are out there calling for the governments to take over, to make them public utilities and things like this. I mean,
we've had mandatory vaccines for over a century now. By the way, we've had mandatory vaccines for almost 120 years. In 1905, the Supreme Court affirmed a Massachusetts law making the smallpox vaccination compulsory. Since then, courts ruled decisively that parents do not have the right to choose for their children. In 1952, Morrison versus State, an appellate court in Missouri, decided that a family of Jehovah's Witnesses did not have the right to resist blood transfusions from their child. Supreme Court ruled in 68 that the, quote, right to practice religion freely does not include liberty to expose one's child to ill health or death. Let's see, what else? When unvaccinated children, blah, 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 blah. In Haiti, yep. Okay, so I just wanted to give a little background there in case, we haven't talked about that a lot. But, it's one of these slippery slopes, right? You open the door, every single vaccine that'll come up may get to the point where it's compulsory because you...
Exactly. Well, and I do want to add to the conversation, Micah. So I was mentioning the Twitter thing. I actually saw, if anybody out there has heard of New Scientist, it's a scientific magazine that's pretty respected. It's been around since 1956, I think. And it has been very active and promoting obviously science, but some would say maybe they take more of an establishment line. And they put out an article, the editorial staff of the New Scientist, calling for compulsory vaccinations in the UK, and they recommended US, Australia, etc., to get the measles kind of thing, and to a certain percentage where it won't affect. We'll keep the herd immunity or whatever. So this, it's not just us kind of randomly talking about this. This is being pushed in the media. It's being pushed, as I said, with certain politicians seeking to remove exemptions here in Houston and Texas in general.
You remember Gardasil? What was the problem with that? Remember how many people were upset that horrible tyrant Rick Perry was going to force everybody to have Gardasil shots? Make all their teen kids and 11-year-old daughters who get a shot to help them not get HPV, But in the long run, I think it turned out that there was something, if it wasn't wrong with, let me see here, some of what they call the damning evidence of deliberate misinformation of the least indicated and most reported of all vaccines, the HPV vaccine, most commonly represented as Gardasil. Everybody was excited because it was a woman's vaccine, that could protect you. The past 8 years of some scientists' research has shown that it's a reckless endangerment of youth, including Tom Janelvik, a PhD, who poses some important questions. Is it ethical to put young women at risk of death by disabling autoimmune disease at a pre-adolescent age for a vaccine that has not yet prevented a single case of cervical cancer, a disease that may develop 20 to 30 years after exposure to HPV, when the same can be prevented with a regular Pap screening, which incurs no risks? And see, that's the thing. That's the thing about vaccines. There's more than one way to skin a cat. There's more than one way to prevent illnesses. And when everybody just talks about vaccine, it's as if sticking a needle is the only way to be healthy. And that sounds kind of backwards.
And also it takes away your choice. That's the whole thing, is it takes away your
That
choice.
don't sound good.
I want to mention one story before we run out of time, because we've
This
talked
is
about
horrible
it.
story, too.
This is an update on
we
Chelsea
knew it was
Manning.
gonna happen.
We did know this was going to happen. Chelsea Manning was ordered to go back to jail yesterday after refusing to once again participate in the grand jury subpoena. So for those who don't know, Chelsea Manning, formerly Bradley Manning, who leaked, former U.S. Army intelligence analyst who leaked documents to WikiLeaks back in 2010 and spent 5 years in prison, and it was released. Now has, and in a couple months back was taken in after 62 days in jail in solitary confinement because she refused to participate in a grand jury which is investigating Julian Assange and WikiLeaks, and she said, I'm not going to have any part in this, so you might as well lock me up. They held her for 62 days, and then eventually the grand jury, they ended that grand jury, so she was allowed to go home for about a week. And, the interesting thing is she seems to have stayed positive. She was on Twitter last night or the day before tweeting about
how could she
live
not,
streaming
after
video
all
games.
the stuff she's been through.
But she was on Twitter literally saying, all right, I'm going live with Red Dead, whatever. Like, if anybody wants to watch me come play, she's like, I'm going in to turn myself in tomorrow, more than likely. And that's exactly what happened. U.S. Marshals took her back into custody at the U.S. District Courthouse in Virginia Thursday afternoon as she refused to cooperate yet again with a subpoena to testify before another secret federal grand jury. And that's the thing, is people don't like grand juries because they're secretive. There's no testimony to the public.
Sound like justice.
It's a kangaroo court. And so she said, I'm not going to participate. You can hold me, you can take me, you might as well do it. I'm not going to participate in any way. She was set free just last Thursday after the first grand jury's time expired, and now they've taken her again for who knows how long. And this is, again, part of the government's war against WikiLeaks, against whistleblowers, and against the freedom of the press.
Because she's obviously not being punished for what she did. She's being punished for not sharing information. And what happened to the right to remain silent?
Yeah, apparently you don't have that if you piss off granddaddy government. I think that's all I got for the day, Mike, unless you got anything or you want to end with a song or Johnny's.
I want to have fun, and I want you to know that there's
Friday.
more going on than what we're talking about. There's so much positive stuff. It'd be great. Maybe in the future we'll spend. No, because you got to know about this bad stuff. But
we talk about good stuff.
We
when it happens,
we
too.
do. But in that 1 hour, we're kind of crammed. We end up talking about it in the beginning. But really, one of the most positive things, besides KPFT giving us this room to have this dialogue with everyone, is the listeners and the world that they live in and the changes that they're making. We don't even know about them all, but we do hope that you will call in and talk to us about some of them. We'll be back Monday on the HD side. We'll be back here next Friday. So
next Friday, I think we'll be taking phone calls again, so we got some exciting things to talk about.
For sure.
Call me, people.
I'm going to IAMX tonight. We're going to close with some IAMX.
Go see House of J soon. Go to the Garden on Sunday, and catch up next Monday or next Friday here on KPFT. We'll talk to you soon. Remember, you're powerful, you're beautiful, you're free. Peace.
You're a KPFT listener. Yeah.